The October wind cut through the Dakota territory like a rusted blade, carrying dust and dried grass across the barren plains. The small town of Bitter Creek huddled against the endless prairie, its weathered wooden buildings leaning together as if seeking comfort from the desolation. Oil lamps flickered behind dirty windows, casting weak pools of light that barely pushed back the gathering dusk. The town square, usually quiet save for the occasional drunk or stray dog, buzzed with unusual activity. Men in worn coats and mud-caked boots gathered around a raised platform hastily constructed from shipping crates and planks. Women peered from doorways and shop windows, some with disapproval etched on their faces, others with a mixture of pity and relief that they weren't the ones standing in that terrible line. The bride market had come to Bitter Creek. 12 women stood on the platform, arranged like cattle at auction. Some wore their best dresses, patched and mended but clean. Others stood in travel-worn clothes. Having journeyed far to reach this last resort, their faces told different stories. Hope, resignation, fear, defiance, but all shared the common thread of desperation that had brought them to this moment. At the edge of the crowd, Samuel McKenna, the market organizer, barked out descriptions like a carnival barker. "Fine, strong women here, gentlemen, good for cooking, cleaning, bearing sons, start your bidding." The air grew heavy with tension as a figure appeared at the far end of the street. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, each step deliberate and sure. Standing well over 6 feet, his broad shoulders were wrapped in a buffalo hide coat, and his long black hair was tied back with a leather cord. His face bore the sharp angles and proud features of the Lakota people, weathered by sun and wind into something both fierce and dignified. Conversations died as he approached. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through wheat. Is that an Indian? What's a savage doing here? Someone fetch the sheriff. Hush now. He's got gold in his hand. Gold spends the same no matter the color of the man holding it." The warrior, for there was no mistaking him for anything else, paid no attention to the murmurs. His dark eyes, deep as winter rivers, remained fixed ahead as he approached the platform. His name was Joseph Standing Bear, though the white men knew him only as the Lakota warrior who occasionally traded at the fort. McKenna's voice faltered for a moment, then recovered with forced joviality. "Well now, seems we have all kinds of customers today. Step right up, sir, and see what we have to offer." Joseph ascended the platform steps, his moccasined feet silent on the creaking wood. The crowd pressed closer, morbid curiosity overcoming their initial shock. Some of the women on the platform shrank back, while others stood straighter, hope flickering in their eyes. Even a Lakota husband might be better than no husband at all in this harsh land. He walked slowly down the line, his expression unreadable. He passed the first woman, young and blonde with cornflower blue eyes that reminded him of prairie wildflowers. She was pretty in the way the white men preferred, soft and delicate. The crowd murmured approval. Certain he would choose her, he moved on. The second woman, a sturdy German immigrant, looked him directly in the eye. She had strong arms and an honest face, a good choice for a hard life, the townspeople thought. He continued walking, one by one. He passed them all, the young ones trembling with fear or anticipation, the older ones worn down by hardship, the pretty ones preening despite their circumstances. The crowd grew restless, some beginning to jeer. Make up your mind. Indian. Maybe he doesn't know what women are for. Probably can't afford any of them anyway. Joseph reached the end of the line and stopped. There, separated from the others by a deliberate gap, stood a woman everyone else had overlooked. She was neither young nor old, perhaps 30 summers. Her brown hair, once lustrous, hung limp and neglected. Her left arm bore terrible scars that disappeared beneath her sleeve, and she held it slightly bent, as if it pained her. But it was her eyes that held Joseph's attention, gray as storm clouds. They blazed with a mixture of fear and defiance that spoke of someone who had survived the worst life could offer and refused to break. This was Eleanor Grace Hartley, though most now simply called her the damaged one. widowed, scarred, and cast aside by proper society. She stood at the auction not by choice, but by necessity. The town's charity had run out, and it was either this or starvation. The Lakota warrior walked past every bride in line, then reached for the one no one wanted. The silence that fell was absolute. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if nature itself held its breath. Joseph extended his hand toward Eleanor, palm up in a gesture that was both an offer and a question. McKenna sputtered, his face reddening. "Now, sir, surely you'd prefer one of our finer specimens. This one here, she's damaged goods, if you catch my meaning. Can't properly work with that arm. And who knows what else is wrong with her. I've got much better." Joseph's gaze shifted to McKenna, and something in those dark eyes made the man's words die in his throat. Without speaking, the warrior reached into his coat and withdrew a leather pouch. He poured its contents onto the platform gold nuggets that caught the lamplight and set the crowd murmuring again. That's twice what any of them are worth," someone whispered. 3 times, another corrected. Eleanor stared at the offered hand as if it were a snake that might strike. Her whole body trembled, though whether from cold or emotion was impossible to tell. She had watched him approach with the same resignation she'd felt standing on this platform. Just another humiliation to endure. But now, faced with this unexpected choice, she found herself paralyzed. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. Joseph spoke for the first time, his voice deep and measured, carrying the accent of one who had learned English as a second tongue. "You understand survival? That is enough." The crowd erupted in shocked exclamations and heated arguments. Some demanded the sheriff intervene. Others insisted that business was business. McKenna, eyeing the gold, quickly moved to finalize the transaction before anyone could stop it. "Sold," he declared, scooping up the nuggets with greedy hands. "May God have mercy on both your souls." Eleanor found herself moving forward as if in a dream. She placed her good hand in Joseph's, surprised by its warmth and steadiness. He helped her down from the platform with unexpected gentleness, then faced the hostile crowd with calm indifference. "This ain't right," a burly miner growled, stepping forward. "Bad enough we got to tolerate your kind trading at the fort, but taking our women—" "Your women?" Joseph's voice carried quiet contempt. "You put her on platform like horse for sale. Now she is not yours." The miner's face flushed red, and his hand moved toward the pistol at his hip. Before he could draw, Joseph's hand flashed out, a hunting knife appearing as if from nowhere. He didn't threaten, didn't posture, he simply held it with the easy confidence of a man who knew how to use it. "We go now," he said, not to the miner, but to Eleanor. She nodded mutely, still processing the bizarre turn her life had taken. Joseph sheathed his knife and turned toward the edge of town, where 2 horses waited, his own painted Mustang and a sturdy mare he had brought for his bride. As they walked through the parting crowd, Eleanor heard the whispers following them like angry hornets. "She'll be dead within a week. Serves her right, the shameless creature. What kind of Christian woman goes with a heathen? The damaged and the damned, they deserve each other." Eleanor kept her head high. Though each word stung, she had endured worse from these people who now pretended shock at her fate. At least the Lakota warrior had chosen her, had seen something worth gold in her broken body and bitter spirit. That was more than anyone in Bitter Creek had ever offered. As they reached the horses, Joseph turned to her. "You ride?" I used to, before." She gestured helplessly at her scarred arm. Without comment, he lifted her onto the mare's back as easily as if she weighed nothing. His hands were careful around her injuries, and she found herself blinking back unexpected tears at this small kindness. As Joseph mounted his own horse, Eleanor took one last look at Bitter Creek. The oil lamps were growing brighter as darkness fell, but she felt no nostalgia for their false warmth. The town had been a cage, its people her jailers. Whatever lay ahead in the vast darkness of the prairie, it could be no worse than what she left behind. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and the first drops of cold rain began to fall. Joseph pulled an extra buffalo robe from his pack and handed it to her. "Storm coming," he said simply. "We ride through it." Eleanor wrapped the robe around her shoulders, breathing in the wild scent of prairie grass and smoke that clung to it. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why did you choose me?" Joseph was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, just as they passed the last building and entered the open plain, he spoke. "Eagles with broken wings learn to walk with wolves. Sometimes walking is stronger than flying." The rain began in earnest then, turning the dust to mud and the world to a blur of water and shadow. But Eleanor Grace Hartley, the woman no one wanted, rode into the storm beside the Lakota warrior who had paid gold for her freedom. And for the first time in years, she was not afraid. The rain fell in sheets, turning the world into a gray curtain that swallowed sight and sound. Eleanor hunched deeper into the buffalo robe, her teeth chattering despite its warmth. Every bounce of the horse sent sharp pains through her damaged arm, but she bit her lip and endured. She had learned long ago that showing weakness only invited more pain. They rode for what felt like hours before Joseph raised his hand, signaling a stop. Through the downpour, Eleanor could barely make out a cluster of cottonwood trees bent by the wind. Joseph dismounted and led both horses beneath the meager shelter of the branches. "We wait," he said, already working to secure the horses. Eleanor tried to dismount on her own, but her stiff muscles and bad arm betrayed her. She would have fallen if Joseph hadn't caught her, his hands steady but impersonal as he set her on her feet. She expected mockery or irritation. Her late husband would have cursed her clumsiness, but Joseph simply turned back to tend the horses. Under the trees, the rain still found them, but its fury was somewhat blunted. Joseph efficiently set up a small shelter using a buffalo hide stretched between branches, creating a pocket of relative dryness. He gathered what dry wood he could find and, using skills Eleanor couldn't fathom, managed to coax a small fire to life despite the wet conditions. Eleanor sat huddled by the flames, stealing glances at her strange new husband. The firelight danced across his features, highlighting the scar that ran along his left jaw, the powerful set of his shoulders, the quiet confidence in every movement. He worked in silence, checking the horses, adjusting the shelter, all with an economy of motion that spoke of a lifetime living in harmony with the harsh plains. When he finally settled across the fire from her, Eleanor found her voice. "Mister, I don't even know what to call you. Joseph Standing Bear is my name for the white man's world. My people know me as Tatanka Waste, Good Buffalo." He studied her with those penetrating eyes. "You are Eleanor." "Yes, Eleanor Grace Hartley. Or I was. I suppose I don't know what I am now." "You are Eleanor. Names, papers, words whites use. These do not change who you are." She pulled the robe tighter, wincing as the movement jarred her arm. "Why did you really choose me?" The truth this time. There were prettier women, stronger women, younger women. Joseph was quiet for a long moment, his gaze focused on the fire. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. "My wife was called Morning Star. 3 winters ago, blue coat soldiers came to our camp while warriors were hunting. He paused, a muscle working in his jaw. She fought. They hurt her, left her with scars. Body healed, but spirit was wounded. She walked into winter storm one night, did not return." Eleanor's breath caught. She understood that kind of pain, the kind that made winter storms seem welcoming. Joseph continued. "When I saw you stand there, saw your eyes, I recognized the look, same as Morning Star after, but you still stand, still fight, eagles with broken wings, like I said." "I'm not fighting," Eleanor said bitterly. "I'm just too much of a coward to follow your Morning Star into that storm. Coward does not stand on platform to be sold rather than beg. Coward does not survive what gave you those scars." His eyes flickered to her arm. "Your husband?" The question was asked so matter-of-factly that Eleanor found herself answering. "Thomas, my late husband. He had difficulties with drink." And with his temper, the night he did this, she touched her scarred arm. He was angry about burned bread. He threw me into the stove, held my arm against the hot iron until I passed out. The doctor said I was lucky to keep the arm at all. He is dead now. Horse kicked him in the head 6 months ago. The whole town called it a tragedy. His poor widow, they said, as if they hadn't heard my screams for 5 years. Joseph nodded slowly. Good horse. Despite everything, Eleanor found herself almost smiling at that. The sheriff shot the horse afterward, said it was dangerous. Whites kill wrong things, Joseph observed. Keep bad men, shoot good horses. The rain was beginning to slacken, though thunder still rumbled across the plains. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably, questions burning in her mind. What happens now? Where are we going? What do you expect from me? Joseph poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks dancing upward. We go to my camp. 2 days' ride if weather clears. You will have own lodge next to mine. My sister, Winona, will teach you our ways if you wish to learn. If not, you stay in lodge. Do what you can. Do not do what you cannot. And at night? Eleanor forced herself to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. Joseph's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes softened. Morning Star and I shared blankets for 10 winters. When she died, that part of me died too. I did not buy wife for my bed. I bought woman who needed leaving that place, same as I needed someone to share work of living. Nothing more required. Eleanor felt a complex mix of relief and something else. Disappointment. She pushed the thought away. The others at your camp, they won't accept me. I'm white. I'm damaged. You are with me. Joseph interrupted. That is enough for beginning. Rest you earn yourself, or not. Your choice. He rose and walked to the edge of their shelter, studying the sky. The storm was moving east, leaving behind the clean, sharp smell of rain-washed earth. Stars began to appear between the racing clouds. Storm passes. We ride again soon. He turned back to her. Eat first. From his pack, he produced dried meat and a kind of flat bread Eleanor didn't recognize. She took it gratefully, suddenly aware of her hunger. They ate in companionable silence, the fire crackling between them. As Eleanor chewed the tough but flavorful meat, she studied Joseph more openly. He was younger than she'd first thought, perhaps only a few winters older than her own 30 years. His hands, she noticed, bore their own scars, marks of battle, of work, of survival. They were hands that had known violence, but could also gentle a horse and build a fire in the rain. I don't understand, she said suddenly. Your Morning Star. You loved her. Why would you tie yourself to a stranger? Surely you could find another woman among your own people. Joseph considered her words. After Morning Star walked into storm, I went on warpath, killed 3 soldiers who had hurt her. Army hunted me. I became ghost between 2 worlds. Cannot live fully with my people. Bring danger to them. Cannot live in white world. They see only savage. Need someone who understands standing between worlds. You understand this. Eleanor absorbed this information, realizing the full weight of what he was telling her. He was an outcast too, caught between 2 societies that would never fully accept him. My sister says I need purpose beyond war, Joseph continued. Says my spirit grows too dark, too cold. Maybe she is right. Maybe helping one person leave cage is better than killing those who build cages. The fire had burned low, casting longer shadows. Joseph stood and began breaking down their temporary camp with the same quiet efficiency he'd set it up. Eleanor tried to help, but her fumbling attempts with one good arm only seemed to hinder. I'm sorry, she said, frustrated. I'm not much use. You will learn, Joseph said simply, or you will not. No apologies needed. As they prepared to mount again, Eleanor caught Joseph's arm with her good hand. He stilled, looking down at where she touched him. Thank you, she said, for choosing me, for telling me why, for... She gestured helplessly at everything, the shelter from the storm, the food, the quiet acceptance. Joseph nodded once, then helped her onto the mare, as they rode out from under the cottonwoods. The sky had cleared enough to show a tapestry of stars. The prairie stretched endlessly before them, silver touched by starlight. They rode through the night, Joseph setting a steady but not punishing pace. Sometimes he would point out landmarks, a distinctive rock formation, a creek bed, a lone tree twisted by years of wind. Eleanor tried to memorize them all, understanding that this knowledge might one day save her life. As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky in shades of rose and gold, exhaustion weighed on Eleanor like a physical thing. Her bad arm throbbed, her back ached, and she could barely keep her eyes open. Just when she thought she might fall from the saddle, Joseph called a halt. They were at the edge of a small valley, with a clear stream running through it and good grass for the horses. As Joseph made camp again with that remarkable efficiency, Eleanor stood at the valley's rim, watching the sun rise over the endless grassland. For the first time in years, she was watching a sunrise as a free woman, not free in the way the townspeople of Bitter Creek would define it, perhaps, but free from their judgment, their false pity, their crushing expectations. She was riding into an uncertain future with a man she barely knew, toward a life she couldn't imagine, but she was moving forward instead of slowly dying in place. "Eleanor," Joseph called. "Come, rest now." She turned from the sunrise to find he had laid out bedrolls on opposite sides of a newly built fire, maintaining careful distance while still providing protection. As she settled onto the surprisingly comfortable bed of buffalo robes and blankets, Eleanor realized that for the first time since Thomas had begun his abuse, she wasn't afraid to close her eyes in the presence of a man. "Joseph?" she called softly. "Yes? That thing you said about eagles walking with wolves, is that a Lakota saying?" "No," he replied after a pause. "Is something I think when I see you on that platform. Eagle with broken wing cannot fly away, but walking with wolf pack, still dangerous, still proud, different kind of strong." Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling tears slip down her cheeks, not from sorrow, but from a kind of relief she couldn't name. In the distance, she heard drums, faint but steady, like a heartbeat across the plains, the sound of Joseph's people, perhaps, or maybe just the rhythm of this vast, wild land that was now her home, as sleep finally claimed her. Eleanor Grace Hartley thought that perhaps being the woman no one wanted had been its own kind of blessing. It had led her here, to this moment, to this chance at a different life. And that, she decided, was worth more than all the gold Joseph Standing Bear had laid on that platform. The journey to Joseph's people took them through country that grew wilder with each passing mile. They crossed frozen streams that crackled beneath the horses' hooves, wound through valleys where the wind sang mournful songs, and climbed ridges that offered views of endless grassland rolling like a brown ocean to the horizon. On the second day, as they navigated a particularly treacherous stretch of rocky terrain, Eleanor's exhaustion finally claimed its due. The world began to spin, her vision blurring at the edges. She gripped the saddle horn with her good hand, but her strength was failing. "Joseph!" she managed to call out, her voice weak. He turned in his saddle just as she began to slip sideways, in one fluid motion. He was off his horse and catching her before she hit the ground. His hand touched her forehead, and he frowned at the heat he found there. "Fever," he said, more to himself than to her. Eleanor tried to protest as he lifted her, but the words wouldn't come. Her body felt like it was burning from the inside out, yet she shivered uncontrollably. The last clear thing she remembered was being settled against something warm and solid, Joseph's chest as he mounted his horse with her cradled in front of him. Time became fluid after that. She drifted in and out of consciousness, aware only of movement, of strong arms holding her secure, of a voice speaking in a language she didn't understand but found oddly comforting. Sometimes she thought she heard her late husband's voice, angry and slurred, and she whimpered in fear. But then another voice, deeper and calmer, would chase the phantom away. When she woke fully, she was lying on soft furs in a place that smelled of smoke, leather, and herbs. Firelight danced on buffalo hide walls, and she realized she was inside a teepee. Her travel-stained dress had been replaced with a soft deerskin shift, and her arm, while still scarred and stiff, had been carefully cleaned and wrapped. A woman sat nearby, grinding something in a stone bowl. She was younger than Eleanor, with glossy black braids and a face that reminded her of Joseph. The same proud cheekbones, the same steady gaze. This must be Winona, his sister. "You wake," Winona said in careful English. "Good. Brother worries." Eleanor tried to sit up, but the world tilted alarmingly. Winona was there instantly, supporting her with surprising strength. "Slow, slow. You very sick for 2 days. Fever from exhaustion, from cold, from—" She gestured at Eleanor's arm. "Old hurt still poison blood sometimes." "Yes? 2 days?" Eleanor's voice came out as a croak. "Where's Joseph?" "Hunting. Back soon. You drink now." Winona helped her sip a tea that tasted of bitter herbs and something floral. It was unpleasant but soothing, and Eleanor could feel strength beginning to trickle back into her limbs. "You are Winona," Eleanor said. "Joseph told me about you." The Lakota woman studied her with frank curiosity. "He told you of Morningstar too?" "Yes." Winona nodded, seeming satisfied by something in Eleanor's response. "You are not like her. She was like butterfly, beautiful, delicate, made for summer days. You are different." "I'm broken," Eleanor said quietly. "Damaged goods, as they said." "Broken?" Winona set aside her grinding stone and moved closer. "Show me broken." She took Eleanor's scarred arm with a gentle but firm hands, examining it with the practiced eye of a healer. She traced the worst of the scars, felt the way the muscles had healed wrong, tested the limited range of motion. "This is not broken," she announced. "This is survived. Big difference. Broken things stay broken. Survived things grow strong in mended places." Before Eleanor could respond, they heard horses approaching. Winona rose gracefully and peered out the tipi entrance. "Brother returns. With him is Samuel Swift Crow, nephew of Chief. They bring deer." Joseph entered, having to duck his tall frame through the opening. His eyes went immediately to Eleanor, and something in his expression softened at seeing her awake. "You feel better?" "Yes, thank you. Your sister has been kind." Another man entered behind Joseph, younger, perhaps 25 winters, with the kind of striking features that would make white women whisper behind their fans. He looked at Eleanor with open curiosity and something else she couldn't quite read. "This is white woman you bring?" Samuel asked in English, clearly for Eleanor's benefit. "She does not look strong enough for our life." Joseph's expression didn't change, but Winona made a sound of disapproval. "Samuel Swift Crow speaks before thinking. As always, pay no attention." But Samuel stepped closer, studying Eleanor with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Why you choose this one? Standing Bear? If you must have white woman, Trader McDougal has daughter with hair like corn silk, young and healthy." "McDougal's daughter is child," Joseph said evenly, "and is not for sale." "This one was for sale," Samuel pointed out, a slight sneer in his voice. "What kind of woman sells herself? What kind of man buys such woman?" Eleanor felt heat rise in her cheeks, not from fever this time, but from anger. She pushed herself up despite her weakness, meeting Samuel's gaze squarely. "The kind of woman who chooses survival over starvation," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "And the kind of man who sees value where others see only damage. If that offends you, perhaps you should examine why you feel the need to question your brother's choices." Samuel's eyes widened slightly, surprised by her response. Winona made a sound that might have been suppressed laughter, and even Joseph's mouth twitched slightly. "She has sharp tongue," Samuel observed, though his hostility seemed somewhat blunted. "That is good. We'll need it here." He turned to Joseph. "Council meets tonight. They want to speak about white woman in camp." After the men left to tend to the deer, Winona helped Eleanor dress in clothes more suitable for the camp. A deerskin dress decorated with simple beadwork, leggings, and moccasins. The dress was clearly old and had been mended many times, but it was clean and warm. "Was morning stars," Winona explained. "I save for if brother finds new woman. You mind?" Eleanor touched the soft leather, thinking of the woman who had worn it before her, who had suffered as she had suffered, who had chosen the winter storm over continued pain. "I'm honored," she said simply. As the day wore on, Eleanor was introduced to the rhythms of the camp. There were perhaps 50 teepees arranged in a rough circle, with cooking fires sending smoke into the cold air. Women worked at various tasks, scraping hides, sewing, tending children. Men cared for horses, repaired weapons, or sat in groups discussing matters Eleanor couldn't understand. Everyone stared at her. Some with curiosity, some with suspicion, a few with outright hostility. Eleanor kept her head high and stayed close to Winona, who seemed to have appointed herself as both guide and protector. "That is Mary Longknife," Winona said, pointing to a woman with gray-streaked hair who was watching them with hard eyes. "Her son killed by soldiers last year. She not like whites. That one is Sarah Crowfeather. Her husband wants second wife. Thinks maybe white woman easier to control than Lakota woman. He is fool." Eleanor absorbed this information, understanding that she was entering a complex social structure where she would have to find her place or make one. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Joseph appeared at the tipi entrance. "Council wants to see you," he said to Eleanor. "I will speak for you, but they want to look, to judge for themselves." Eleanor's stomach knotted with anxiety, but she nodded. She had faced the judgment of Bitter Creek for years. She could face this too. The council met in a large teepee at the center of camp. 8 men sat in a circle, ranging from an ancient elder with milky eyes to middle-aged warriors with scars marking their histories. Samuel Swift Crow was among them, his expression unreadable. Joseph led her to stand before them, then took his place in the circle. The old man, clearly the chief, studied her for a long moment before speaking. Joseph translated, his voice neutral. "He says you are welcome as my woman, but asks why he should allow white women to stay when whites take everything from us." Eleanor thought carefully before responding. "I cannot answer for all whites, just as you cannot answer for all Lakota. I can only say that I have been cast out by my own people, and I seek nothing from yours except the chance to earn my place through my actions." The chief nodded slowly as Joseph translated. Another man, his face marked by a terrible scar across one eye, spoke harshly. Again, Joseph translated, though Eleanor could see the tension in his jaw. "He says white women are weak, useless for real work, says you will be burden on tribe, take food from children's mouths." Eleanor straightened her spine. "I have 1 good arm and 2 good legs. I can learn. I may work differently than your women, but different doesn't mean useless. In my world, I kept house, cooked, preserved food, tended garden, mended clothes, and nursed the sick, all with a husband who beat me daily. If I could do that, I can learn your ways." The scarred man made a dismissive gesture, but Eleanor wasn't finished. "And if you think white women are weak," she added, "remember that I survived 5 years of torture that would have broken many warriors. Weakness isn't about the color of one's skin or the strength of one's arm. It's about giving up. I haven't given up." A murmur ran through the council. The chief's weathered face cracked into what might have been a slight smile. He spoke again, this time directly to Eleanor rather than through Joseph. "You will have chance," he said in heavily accented English, "but must prove, must work, must learn. Not guest member of tribe or nothing." "I understand," Eleanor said. The council had more to discuss with Joseph, matters of hunting territories and movements of army patrols, so Eleanor was dismissed. Winona was waiting outside and walked her back to the teepee. "You did well," she said. "Chief Redhawk likes courage, and Jacob One Eye, even if he argues, respects strength. You show both." That night, as Eleanor lay in the teepee, listening to the sounds of the camp settling for sleep, dogs barking, children being hushed, the soft chanting from somewhere distant, She thought about the strangeness of her situation. A week ago, she had stood on an auction platform in Bitter Creek, convinced her life was over. Now she lay in a Lakota teepee, wearing a dead woman's clothes. Having faced a tribal council and won at least temporary acceptance, Joseph entered quietly, moving to his own sleeping area across the fire. They had maintained this respectful distance since arriving at the camp. "Joseph?" she called softly. "Yes? Thank you for speaking for me. And for everything else." He was quiet for a moment. "You spoke well yourself. Impressed council. Impressed me." "I was terrified," she admitted. "Fear is wise, but you did not let fear control you. That is warrior's way." Eleanor smiled in the darkness. "I'm no warrior. Eagles who walk with wolves must learn wolf ways." He replied, "Rest now. Tomorrow, real work begins." As she drifted towards sleep, Eleanor heard those drums again, closer now, the heartbeat of the camp, of the people who might, if she proved herself, become her people. Her arm ached, her body was exhausted, and tomorrow would bring new challenges. But for the first time in memory, she faced the coming dawn with something that felt dangerously like hope. The woman no one wanted was becoming someone else entirely. Who that would be remained to be seen, but Eleanor was determined to find out. Winter descended upon the camp like a hungry wolf, bringing snow that piled against the teepees and wind that cut through even the thickest buffalo robes. Eleanor had thought she knew cold from her years in Bitter Creek, but the winter on the open plains was something else entirely, a living thing that sought out any weakness and exploited it mercilessly. Her first weeks in the camp had been a series of humiliating failures. The simple task of collecting water became an ordeal when she couldn't manage the heavy buffalo stomach bags with one arm. Setting up drying racks for meat left her fumbling and frustrated. Even maintaining the teepee fire, something she thought she knew from years of tending hearths, required different skills here, where every piece of wood was precious and the smoke had to be managed just so. The women watched her struggles with expressions ranging from pity to disdain. Mary Longknife, the woman who had lost her son to soldiers, seemed to take particular satisfaction in Eleanor's difficulties. She would mutter in Lakota as Eleanor passed, words that needed no translation to convey their meaning. But Winona remained patient, showing Eleanor again and again how to adapt tasks for her limitation. "You think too much like white woman," she would say. "Think must do this way. Lakota way is must do, find how." Slowly, painfully, Eleanor began to learn. She developed techniques for bracing items against her body while working with her good hand. She learned to use her teeth as a tool, her knees as a vice, her damaged arm as a prop if not a fully functional limb. Each small victory successfully scraping a hide, weaving a basket, patching a tear in the tippy cover, felt monumental. The breakthrough came on a bitter morning when the camp's children were playing in the snow. Little Daniel's spotted tail, no more than 6 winters, had climbed too high in a cottonwood tree and gotten stuck, too frightened to climb down. The branches were icy, treacherous, and the adults were all occupied with urgent tasks. Eleanor heard his cries and found him clinging to a branch 15 feet up, tears freezing on his cheeks. Without thinking, she began to climb, using her good arm to pull herself up while bracing with her legs and damaged arm. It was awkward, painful, but she'd climbed trees as a girl before Thomas had broken her body and spirit. She reached Daniel and talked him through the descent, going first to show him the safe path, catching him when he slipped on the final branch. When they reached the ground, she found half the camp had gathered to watch, including Mary Longknife. The older woman studied Eleanor for a long moment, then nodded once before walking away. It wasn't acceptance, exactly, but it was acknowledgement that the white woman might not be entirely useless. That night, Daniel's mother, Rebecca Spotted Tail, brought Eleanor a pair of beautifully beaded moccasins. "For Daniel's tree climber," she said simply in English. As winter deepened, Eleanor found her place in the camp's rhythm. She became skilled at tasks that didn't require 2 strong arms, watching children while their mothers worked, mending with her precise stitches, preparing certain medicines under Winona's guidance. She learned enough Lakota to understand basic conversations. Though speaking, it still tied her tongue in knots. The camp moved twice as winter progressed, following the buffalo herds and staying ahead of army patrols. Eleanor learned to take down and set up a teepee, to pack efficiently, to read the subtle signs that meant it was time to move. The work was hard, harder than anything she'd known in Bitter Creek, but it was honest work, shared work, and no one hit her when she made mistakes. One evening, as a blizzard raged outside, Eleanor sat with a group of women doing beadwork by firelight. She was working on a small pouch, her stitches careful and even despite her handicap. The conversation flowed around her in Lakota, comfortable and domestic. Sarah Crowfeather was complaining about her husband's snoring. Another woman, Martha Two Bears, was worried about her son's cough. Normal women's talk that transcended culture. Eleanor found herself smiling as she worked, feeling almost like she belonged. Then Mary Longknife spoke, her voice cutting through the chatter. She said something in Lakota that made the other women fall silent. Eleanor looked up to find the older woman staring at her. She asks, Winona translated quietly, "Why you smile when you do not understand our words?" Eleanor set down her beadwork, meeting Mary's hard gaze. "I understand the important parts," she said. "I understand women worried about their families, complaining about their men, sharing their work. These things sound the same in any language." Mary was quiet for a long moment, then spoke again. This time, Winona's translation came with surprise. She says her son also climbed trees, always too high, always getting stuck. She says, "You did good thing for Daniel." It was the closest thing to approval Eleanor had received from Mary Longknife. She nodded respectfully, understanding the effort it had taken for the grieving mother to say even that much to a white woman. The conversation resumed, and this time, when the women laughed at something, Martha Two Bears translated the joke for Eleanor. It was a small thing, but it felt like a door opening. As the winter moon grew full, bringing with it the coldest weather yet, disaster struck. A hunting party returned with news that a bad storm was coming, the kind that could bury the camp, kill the horses, freeze anyone caught outside. Worse, they'd spotted army scouts just 2 valleys over. The camp would need to move, and quickly. The controlled chaos of breaking camp in a blizzard tested everyone. Eleanor worked with desperate efficiency, knowing that any delay could cost lives. She was tying down the last of the teepee bundles when she heard a child crying. Daniel's spotted tail had wandered off in the swirling snow, chasing after a puppy. Without hesitation, Eleanor plunged into the blizzard. The wind hit her like a physical blow, driving ice crystals into her face. She could barely see 3 feet ahead, but she followed the sound of crying, calling Daniel's name. She found him huddled against a rock, the puppy clutched in his arms, both child and dog shivering violently. Eleanor wrapped them in her buffalo robe and tried to find her way back, but the world had become a white void. The wind stole her breath, and her damaged arm, always weak and cold, had gone completely numb. Then she heard it. Drums. Joseph and other men were beating drums to guide the lost home. Eleanor struggled toward the sound, carrying Daniel and the puppy, fighting for every step. Her legs felt like stone. Her good arm burned with fatigue, but she kept moving. Strong hands suddenly grasped her. Joseph, who had come searching when the count came up short. He took Daniel from her, shouting something she couldn't hear over the wind, and led them back to safety. The camp had to shelter in place that night, unable to flee with the storm raging. They circled the teepees tight, with the horses brought inside the circle. Everyone crowded together for warmth, and Eleanor found herself pressed between Winona and Sarah Crowfeather, with Daniel's family nearby. The boy wrapped in warm robes, but constantly checking to make sure Eleanor was still there. "Brave heart," Rebecca's spotted tail said to Eleanor in careful English. "My boy lives because you have brave heart." "Foolish woman," Mary Longknife corrected, but there was something different in her tone. "Foolish like Lakota woman, risk everything for child, not even yours." As the storm raged through the night, Eleanor dozed fitfully, waking often to check on Daniel. During one of these wakeful moments, she found Joseph watching her from across the fire. Their eyes met and held, something unspoken passing between them. "You did well," he said quietly. "I did what anyone would do." "No," he said. "You did what mother would do, what warrior would do, what morning star would have done." It was the first time he'd compared her to his lost wife in a way that wasn't about shared pain. Eleanor felt something shift in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. The storm passed by dawn, leaving the world transformed under deep snow. The army scouts were likely as buried as they were, buying the camp time. As people emerged to dig out and check on the horses, Eleanor was surprised to find Mary Longknife at her side. "You need learn winter plants," the older woman said brusquely. "For medicine. Come." It was an invitation, a teaching offer. Eleanor looked at Winona, who was smiling broadly. "Go," Joseph's sister said. "Mary knows more about healing than anyone. She does not teach whites, until now." As Eleanor followed Mary Longknife through the snow-covered camp, she realized something had fundamentally changed. She was no longer the damaged white woman Joseph had bought at a bride auction. She was becoming something else, not quite Lakota, perhaps never fully that, but something new, someone who had earned her place through action rather than birth, through choice rather than chance. The damaged goods from Bitter Creek had found her strength in a Lakota winter, and spring, when it came, would find her transformed. That evening, as she prepared medicines under Mary's stern tutelage, Eleanor caught sight of a reflection in a polished copper pot. The face that looked back was leaner, weathered by wind and sun, but the eyes were different. The haunted look was fading, replaced by something fiercer, more alive. She was becoming the eagle who had learned to walk with wolves, and she was beginning to understand that walking, as Joseph had said, might indeed be its own kind of strength. The spring sun had barely begun to warm the prairie when the riders appeared on the northern ridge. Eleanor was gathering early herbs with Mary Longknife when she saw them, 8 men, moving with the deliberate pace of hunters who had found their prey. "White men," Mary said quietly, her hand moving instinctively to the knife at her belt. "Get to camp. Warn others." Eleanor ran, her moccasins flying over the muddy ground. She burst into the center of camp, gasping out the warning. Within moments, the peaceful morning transformed into controlled preparation. Women gathered children, men checked weapons, and Chief Red Hawk called the council. Joseph appeared at Eleanor's side, his face grim. "How many?" "8, coming from the north." He nodded, already moving toward his weapons. "Stay with women and children, if fighting comes." "I know," Eleanor interrupted. She'd learned the evacuation protocols over the winter. Protect the young, the old, and the sacred items. Run if necessary. Survive. But as the riders drew closer, Eleanor's blood ran cold. She recognized the man leading them. Marcus Hammond, Thomas's brother, from Bitter Creek. The family resemblance was unmistakable in the cruel set of his jaw, the way he sat his horse like he owned the earth beneath it. Chief Red Hawk met the riders at the camp's edge, Joseph and several other warriors flanking him. Eleanor watched from behind a teepee. Close enough to hear. "We're looking for stolen property," Hammond announced without preamble, his voice carrying the same arrogant edge Thomas's had. "A woman, white woman, brown hair, damaged arm. Belonged to my brother." "No white woman here is property," Joseph said evenly. "Slavery ended with your war between blue and gray." Hammond's face reddened. "Don't get smart with me. Savage. She was bought legal at a bride auction. Got the papers right here. That makes her mine now that my brother's dead family property that was stolen." Eleanor's stomach churned. She'd known Thomas had a brother, but she'd thought him far away, uninterested in his brother's widow. She should have known the Hammonds wouldn't let even damaged property go free. "The woman was paid for," Chief Red Hawk said in careful English. "Gold given, trade complete. She belongs to Standing Bear now. Indian marriage ain't legal." One of Hammond's men spat. "No Christian ceremony, no legal papers. She's still a Hammond woman." Eleanor had heard enough, before anyone could stop her. She stepped out from behind the teepee and walked toward the confrontation. She heard Winona hiss her name in warning, but she kept walking. Marcus Hammond's eyes lit up with satisfaction when he saw her. "There you are. Eleanor, come on now. Time to go home." "I am home," Eleanor said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Hammond's expression darkened. "You'd choose these heathens over your own kind? Over your legal family?" "My legal family broke my arm and left me scarred," Eleanor said loudly enough for all to hear. "My own kind put me on an auction block like livestock. These people you call heathens have shown me more humanity in one winter than Bitter Creek showed me in 5 years. You're not thinking clearly," Hammond said, his voice taking on a patronizing tone that made Eleanor's skin crawl. "Living with savages has confused you. Once we get you back to civilization—" "No." The single word hung in the air like a challenge. Hammond's face flushed darker. "You don't get a say in this, woman. The law is the law. You're coming with us, one way or another." His hand moved toward his gun. Instantly, 20 Lakota warriors had arrows nocked and aimed. The other white men reached for their weapons but froze, realizing they were vastly outnumbered. "Perhaps," Joseph said quietly, "you should reconsider." Hammond's eyes darted between the warriors, calculating. Eleanor knew that look. Thomas had worn it when deciding whether violence was worth the risk. "This ain't over," Hammond finally said. "We'll be back with the army. Let them sort out who owns what." He looked directly at Eleanor. "You've chosen your side, woman. Remember that when the cavalry comes." The white men wheeled their horses and rode away. But Eleanor felt no relief. She knew Hammond meant his threat. The army would listen to a white man's claim over any Indian's word. That night, the council met again. Eleanor was summoned this time, standing before the elders who would decide whether harboring her was worth the risk to the tribe. Jacob One-Eye spoke first, his scarred face severe. "The white woman brings danger. Army will come. People will die for one who is not even of our blood." Others murmured agreement. Eleanor felt the ground shifting beneath her feet, her newfound home suddenly precarious. "I'll leave," she said suddenly. "I won't have deaths on my conscience. I'll go far away where Hammond can't find me, where the army won't connect me to you." "Where would you go?" Chief Red Hawk asked gently. "You have no people who would take you." Eleanor had no answer. The truth was stark. She belonged nowhere now. Caught between worlds. Mary Longknife stood unexpectedly. "The woman saved Daniel Spotted Tail in the blizzard. She has learned our ways, helped with the work, tended our sick. Are we so weak that we give up our own to satisfy white man's greed?" "She is not our own," Jacob One-Eye countered. "Is she not?" Mary challenged. "She has bled for our children, worked beside us, eaten our food and shared our hardships. When does someone become our own? When their skin is the right color, when their blood is pure enough. The whites are coming for us anyway. They always come. At least this time we would fight for just cause." The debate continued. Voices raised in argument. Eleanor stood silent, touched by Mary's defense but sick at the thought of bringing violence to these people who had taken her in. Finally, Joseph stood. He had remained quiet throughout the debate, but now all eyes turned to him. "Eleanor is my woman," he said simply. "I paid for her freedom, not her slavery. If the whites want to take her, they must go through me. If any here feel she should go, I will go with her. We will find another place." Eleanor's breath caught. Joseph was offering to leave his people, his family, his world, for her. Winona stood next. "My brother does not go alone. I go too." Sarah Crowfeather stood. "The woman helped birth my daughter in the winter storm. I stand with her." One by one, people stood. Rebecca, Spotted Tail. Martha, Two Bears. Even some who had barely spoken to Eleanor. Not everyone. Jacob One-Eye remained seated, as did several others. But enough, more than enough. Chief Red Hawk raised his hand for silence. "It is decided. We do not give up our people to satisfy white greed. If they come, we face them as Lakota together." Later, Eleanor found Joseph by the horse herd, checking the animals as he did every evening. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of fire. "You would have left your people for me," she said softly. Joseph didn't look at her, focusing on running his hands along a mare's legs. "My people are who I choose. Morning Star taught me that. She was not born Lakota either. Her mother was Cheyenne, taken in raid, but she became more Lakota than many born to it. I'm not Morning Star." Eleanor said, "No." Joseph agreed, finally meeting her eyes. "You are Eleanor. That is enough." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility. Then Joseph turned back to the horses, and Eleanor returned to the teepee. But something had shifted between them, subtle as smoke on the wind. 3 days later, the scouts reported movement to the east. Not just Hammond and a few men this time. A full army patrol, 30 soldiers with modern rifles and a determination to enforce white law on Indian land. The camp prepared for siege or flight, depending on what came. Eleanor worked with grim efficiency, packing essential supplies, helping prepare medical supplies for potential wounded. She'd made her choice at the confrontation with Hammond, and she would live or die with the consequences. As dawn broke on the 4th day, the army arrived. They formed a line just outside the camp, rifles prominent. An officer, Captain Morrison by his insignia, rode forward with Hammond beside him. "By order of the United States Army," the captain called out, "you will surrender the white woman Eleanor Hammond, stolen property of Marcus Hammond of Bitter Creek." Chief Red Hawk emerged, flanked by his warriors. Joseph stood among them, his face carved from stone. "The woman is not property," Red Hawk said with dignity. "She is member of our band, wife to Standing Bear. Your papers mean nothing here. My papers mean everything everywhere." Captain Morrison replied, "This is United States territory, and U.S. law applies. Surrender the woman peacefully, or we'll take her by force." Eleanor stepped forward before anyone could stop her. She dressed deliberately in her Lakota clothing, her hair braided in their style. Morning Star's dress worn proudly. "Captain Morrison," she said clearly, "I am here of my own free will. I was sold at a bride auction. Yes, sold like property, with no say in my fate. Joseph Standing Bear paid gold to free me from that. If you enforce Marcus Hammond's claim, you enforce slavery." The captain shifted uncomfortably. "The law's clear about legal marriages and family property rights." "Then the law's wrong," Eleanor interrupted. "And if you take me by force, you'll have to kill me to keep me, because I'll run back to my husband and my people at the first opportunity. And I'll keep running until I'm free or dead." A murmur ran through the soldiers. Some looked uncomfortable with their mission. These were men who had perhaps fought to end slavery, now being asked to enforce another kind of bondage. Hammond snarled, "Enough talk, Captain. Do your duty." But before Morrison could respond, a new voice rang out. "Captain Morrison, stand down!" A rider approached from the east, a military courier by his look. He handed Morrison a dispatch, which the captain read with increasing disbelief. "It seems," Morrison said slowly, "that there's been a development. Mr. Hammond, you're under arrest." "What?" Hammond's face went white. "That's impossible." "Wire from Bitter Creek," Morrison continued. "Several women have come forward with evidence that you and your brother were involved in illegal activities. Forced prostitution, extortion, murder of a saloon girl who tried to leave. The territorial marshal wants you brought back immediately for trial." Eleanor felt her knees go weak. She'd known Thomas was cruel, but this, no wonder Hammond had been so desperate to reclaim her. She might have known things, seen things. Hammond tried to run, but the soldiers were on him quickly. As they bound his hands, he screamed at Eleanor. "You did this, you lying witch! You'll pay for this!" "I've been here all winter," Eleanor said quietly. "I knew nothing of this. Perhaps your own cruelty finally caught up with you, as it caught up with Thomas." As the soldiers led Hammond away, Captain Morrison looked at Eleanor with something like respect. "Seems you're free to make your own choices, ma'am. I apologize for the disturbance." After the army left, the camp erupted in celebration. The threat had passed, and Eleanor had proven beyond doubt where her loyalties lay. Even Jacob One-Eye nodded to her with grudging respect. That night, as the celebration continued around the campfires, Eleanor sat alone by the river, processing all that had happened. She heard footsteps and knew without looking that it was Joseph. "You took great risk," he said, settling beside her. "Could have gone with them. Been safe, white woman again." "Safe?" Eleanor laughed bitterly. "I was never safe in that world. Here." She gestured at the camp, the fires, the stars above. "Here I'm scarred and strange and struggle with simple tasks. But here I'm free. Here I'm becoming who I was meant to be." Joseph was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he reached out and took her good hand in his. "Eagles who walk with wolves," he said softly. Eleanor squeezed his hand, feeling the calluses from weapons and work, the strength tempered by gentleness. "The eagle is learning," she said. "And the wolf?" "The wolf remembers what it means to run with pack again," Joseph replied. "To not be alone." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars reflect in the water. Behind them, the camp celebrated. Ahead lay uncertain days. The army would return. The buffalo were disappearing. The world was changing faster than anyone could adapt. But for now, in this moment, Eleanor Grace Hartley, damaged goods from Bitter Creek, the woman no one wanted, sat beside a Lakota warrior who had chosen her above all others, and felt the fierce joy of being exactly where she belonged. The attack came at dawn, 3 weeks after Hammond's arrest. Eleanor woke to the thunder of hoofbeats and the crack of rifles. Not soldiers this time, raiders, white men who hunted Indians for bounties and sport, caring nothing for law or treaties. "Eleanor, run!" Joseph shouted, already grabbing his rifle. "Take the children to the caves." Eleanor didn't hesitate. She'd drilled for this, gathering little Daniel Spotted Tail and other children. She herded them toward the hidden caves in the hills. Even as gunfire erupted behind them, women and elders followed, carrying what they could. But the raiders had planned well. A group had circled around to cut off the escape route. Eleanor saw them coming. 5 men on horseback bearing down on the fleeing families. "Into the ravine!" she shouted, pushing children toward a narrow gulch. But she knew they couldn't all make it in time. Without thinking, Eleanor grabbed a dropped lance from a fallen warrior. Her damaged arm screamed in protest, but she braced the weapon against her body and stood between the raiders and the children. Well, the lead raider laughed. "Look, boys, Squaw Woman thinks she's a warrior. Get to the caves," Eleanor shouted to the others without turning. She heard Mary Longknife urging the children on, heard their feet scrambling over rocks. The raider spurred his horse forward, clearly intending to ride her down. Eleanor held her ground, remembering Joseph's hunting lessons. Wait for the moment. Use their momentum against them. At the last second, she dove aside, jamming the lance into the ground at an angle. The rider, unable to stop, impaled his horse's shoulder on the weapon. The animal screamed and fell, throwing its rider. Eleanor scrambled for the man's dropped pistol, but another raider was already on her. A boot connected with her ribs, sending her sprawling. She rolled desperately as a knife slashed where she'd been. Then an arrow sprouted from the attacker's shoulder. Winona stood on the ravine's edge, bow in hand, already knocking another arrow. "Fight, sister!" she called. Eleanor grabbed the fallen pistol and fired, grazing another raider who was aiming at Winona. Her hands shook, but she forced herself to cock the hammer again. The remaining raiders, realizing their easy prey had become a real fight, retreated toward the main battle. Eleanor collapsed to her knees, ribs screaming, but alive. "The children?" she gasped. "Safe," Mary Longknife said, appearing beside her. "You fought well, like Mother Bear protecting cubs." They could hear the battle raging in the camp. Eleanor wanted to help, but Mary held her back. "Your fight was here. You saved the young ones. That is enough." An hour later, the gunfire died away. Eleanor waited in agony until she saw Joseph walking toward them, bloodied but whole. Relief flooded through her so powerfully she almost fell. The camp had survived, but at terrible cost. 8 warriors dead, including young Samuel Swift Crow, who had once questioned Eleanor's presence. Many wounded. The raiders had been driven off, but they'd taken horses, supplies, and, worst of all, they'd seen the camp's location. That night, as Eleanor helped tend the wounded, she worked beside Sarah Crowfeather, who was stitching a terrible gash on her own husband's chest. "Samuel spoke of you before he died," Sarah said quietly. "Said the white woman fought like Lakota, said he was wrong about you." Eleanor's eyes burned with unshed tears. "He was just protecting his people. He wasn't wrong to question." "No," Sarah agreed. "But he was wrong to judge by skin instead of spirit." The funerals took place at sunset. Eleanor stood with the women, keening the death songs she'd learned over the winter. When Samuel Swift Crow's body was placed on the scaffold, she stepped forward. "I know the words between us were not always kind," she said, her Lakota halting but clear. "But he died defending his people. I honor his sacrifice." Samuel's mother nodded, tears streaming down her weathered face. It was acceptance, final and complete. Chief Red Hawk called council that night. The mood was grim. "We cannot stay," he said. "More will come, always more. The buffalo grow few, the soldiers grow many. We must decide fight until we are all dead, or find another way." The debate was fierce. Some warriors wanted to join with other bands, make a final stand. Others spoke of going to the reservation, though the word was bitter in their mouths. Joseph stood to speak. "I have walked in both worlds. I know the white man's power grows each season like spring flood. We can die as warriors. Yes, but our children, our ways, our stories, these die with us. Is noble death worth everything ending?" "You would have us surrender," Jacob One-Eye challenged, though his tone held more sorrow than anger now. "I would have us survive." Joseph replied, "Adapt. Learn their ways to protect our own. The eagle that cannot fly must learn new strength." Eleanor watched the faces around the fire-proud people grappling with impossible choices. She thought of her own transformation, how she'd found strength not in returning to what she was, but in becoming something new. Finally, Chief Red Hawk spoke. "We will send scouts to speak with the agency, not surrender negotiation. See what terms might preserve something of who we are." The decision sat heavy on everyone. That night, Eleanor found Joseph standing alone at the edge of camp, staring at the stars. "You're thinking of Morning Star," she said softly. "I think she chose right path," he said. "Quick ending instead of slow death of our ways." Eleanor took his hand. Or maybe she just couldn't see that even eagles with broken wings can still soar, just differently. Joseph looked at her, and for the first time since she'd known him, she saw tears in his eyes. "I do not want to see my people caged." "Then help them find freedom within the cage." Eleanor said, "You did that for me. You showed me that survival can be its own victory, that there's honor in adapting. You were strong already." "No," Eleanor said firmly. "I was broken. You and your people helped me rebuild. Now let me help you." Joseph pulled her close, and she felt him shudder with suppressed emotion. They stood wrapped together under the vast prairie sky, two damaged souls finding solace in shared pain. The next days were a blur of preparation. Scouts went out to contact the Indian Agency. The camp prepared to move, possibly for the last time. Eleanor worked tirelessly, helping families pack treasured items, preserving what stories and traditions could be saved. She was documenting healing plants with Mary Longknife when Winona found them. "Raiders return," she said tersely. "Many more this time, 2 days away." The news spread quickly. They couldn't fight off a larger force, not with their wounded, their reduced numbers. The council met again, and this time, the decision was swift. They would go to the agency, negotiate for a settlement where they could keep some autonomy, some dignity. But not all must go. Chief Red Hawk announced, "Those who wish to try another path may leave with my blessing." That night, Joseph came to Eleanor with a proposition. "Some families go north, to Canada. Sitting Bull's people. Free there, for now. It will be a hard journey. Dangerous. But, he paused. But we could go. You and I. Winona wishes to come. Start new. Eleanor's heart raced. Freedom. A chance to build something new with Joseph, away from the crushing weight of both their pasts. But she looked around the camp, at the people who had become her family. What about them? Mary, Sarah, Rebecca. They accepted me, taught me, saved me. How can I abandon them now? Joseph smiled sadly. This is why you are true Lakota. You think of people first. They were still discussing when Mary Longknife appeared. You go, she said firmly. Take my knowledge north. Teach others. Keep ways alive. This is not abandoning. This is preserving. Others came throughout the night. Sarah Crowfeather brought a beaded medicine bag. Rebecca Spotted-Tail offered dried food for the journey. Even Jacob One-Eye came, pressing a hunting knife into Joseph's hands. For protecting the people, wherever they are, he said gruffly. By dawn, a small group had formed. Joseph and Eleanor, Winona, and 3 other families who chose the uncertain freedom of the North over the certain confinement of the reservation. Chief Red Hawk blessed their journey. You carry peace of us, he told them. Live free, remember us. As they prepared to leave, Eleanor stood before the assembled camp one last time. These people who had taken in damaged goods and helped forge something stronger. I came to you broken, she said in Lakota. You made me whole. I go now not as white woman or Lakota woman, but as bridge between. I carry your teachings, your strength, your love. I will not forget. Mary Longknife stepped forward and embraced her. Daughter, she said simply. It was the first time she'd used that word. As the small group rode north, Eleanor looked back once at the camp. The rising sun painted the tipis gold, and she could hear the morning songs beginning. Soon, those songs might only exist in memory and in the hearts of those who carried them forward. Joseph rode beside her, their future uncertain but their path clear. They would face whatever came together, the damaged warrior and the woman no one wanted, who had found in each other and in the Lakota people a strength neither had imagined possible. The prairie stretched endlessly ahead, full of danger and possibility. But Eleanor was no longer afraid. She had learned to walk with wolves, and now she would help teach others that walking, too, was a kind of flight. Behind them, gunfire echoed in the distance as the raiders found an empty camp. The Lakota had scattered like seeds on the wind, some to reservations, some to Canada, all carrying pieces of a proud people's legacy. Eleanor Grace Hartley, once sold on an auction block, now rode toward freedom with an eagle feather in her hair and a wolf's courage in her heart. The transformation was complete, but the journey was just beginning. Spring arrived like a blessing across the Montana Territory, painting the grasslands in shades of green and gold. After the harsh winter journey north, their small band had finally found a valley where they could rest, hidden in the foothills near the Canadian border. The grass grew thick, game was plentiful, and most importantly, they were free. Eleanor stood at the edge of their new camp, watching the sunrise paint the mountains pink. Her body had changed over the months of travel. Lean muscle now covered her frame. Her damaged arm had grown stronger through constant use, and her skin bore the deep tan of someone who lived under open sky. But the greatest change was in her bearing. Gone was the hunched, fearful posture of Bitter Creek. She stood straight, proud, every inch the Lakota woman she had become. You are up early, Winona said, joining her. Joseph's sister had become more than family. She was Eleanor's closest friend, her confidant, her teacher in the ongoing journey of bridging 2 worlds. The baby woke me, Eleanor said, placing a hand on her still flat belly. She had only told Joseph the night before. Watching his face transform from surprise to a joy so profound it took her breath away. Winona's eyes widened, then crinkled with delight. Finally, I wondered when you 2 would give me nieces and nephews to spoil. It had been a slow journey to this point. Through the winter months, as they traveled and struggled and survived together, the careful distance between Eleanor and Joseph had gradually dissolved. What began as respect had deepened to affection. Then to something stronger, the night they crossed into Montana, under a canopy of stars so bright they seemed touchable. Joseph had asked her to share his lodge as true wife, not just companion. "I am not Morningstar," Eleanor had said, her old insecurity surfacing. "No," Joseph had agreed, cupping her face in his hands. "You are Eleanor, my Eleanor, the woman who fought raiders with one good arm, who saved children, who chose my people when her own would have caged her. Morningstar was my past. You are my future." Now that future grew within her, a bridge between bloodlines, a hope for tomorrow. The camp stirred to life around them. Their small band had grown over the winter as other fleeing families joined them. They numbered 30 souls now, not enough to be a true band, but enough to maintain their ways, to keep the stories alive. "Eleanor! Eleanor!" Young Daniel Spotted Tail came running. He had grown over the winter, his legs lengthening, his face losing its baby roundness. "Uncle Joseph says, 'Come quick! Riders approach!'" Eleanor's hand went to the knife at her belt. Another change. Every adult in their group stayed armed, stayed ready, but Daniel was smiling, excited rather than afraid. "Friendly riders," he clarified. "Métis traders." The Métis, mixed blood descendants of French voyageurs and native peoples, had been their salvation more than once during the journey. They traded freely across borders, brought news, and most importantly, didn't care about the color of Eleanor's skin or the mixing of bloods. The trading party was led by a man named Gabriel Dumont, a buffalo hunter with a reputation for fairness and a laugh that could shake mountains. With him rode his wife Madeline and several others, their carts loaded with goods. "Standing Bear," Gabriel called out in his booming voice. "I hear you have a white woman who fights like a warrior. I had to see this marvel for myself." Eleanor stepped forward, amused. "I'm afraid you'll be disappointed. I'm just a woman who does what she must." Gabriel's eyes took in her Lakota dress, her confident stance, the way she held herself ready despite her damaged arm. He nodded approvingly. "Madam, in these lands, that is the definition of a warrior." The trading was good for both sides. The Métis had ammunition, cloth, metal tools, things hard to come by for a band avoiding American military. Joseph's people had beautifully worked hides, Eleanor's medicinal preparations, Mary Longknife's teachings preserved, and Winona's beadwork that was already becoming known for its quality. But more than goods, the Métis brought news. "The American Army presses hard on the bands that went to the agencies," Gabriel said over the evening meal. "They want to break up the tribal structures, scatter families. Many run north now, seeking Sitting Bull's camp or simply seeking freedom." Eleanor felt Joseph tense beside her. They had made the right choice in fleeing, but the cost, leaving so many behind, still weighed on him. "And there is other news," Madeline added, her eyes finding Eleanor. "We heard tell of a white woman taken by Indians being searched for by the army. Rich reward offered. They say she was kidnapped from a bride auction." Eleanor almost laughed. "Kidnapped? I left of my own will." "Ah, but that is not the story told in the American towns," Gabriel said. "They cannot believe a white woman would choose this life. It makes them question too much about themselves." That night, as the Métis camped with them, Eleanor found herself translating between languages, bridging conversations. She had become fluent in Lakota over the months, and her French, learned as a girl before Thomas had forbidden it, returned enough to speak with the voyageur descendants. Around the fire, stories flowed in 3 languages, creating something new. "You see," Joseph said quietly to her, "this is the future. Not pure anything, but mixed, adapted, survived. Our child will be this bridge between worlds." Eleanor leaned into him, feeling the baby flutter for the first time, like butterfly wings inside her. "Our children," she corrected. "I think it's twins. Mary Longknife taught me the signs." Joseph's eyes widened, and she laughed at his expression. The fearless warrior undone by the prospect of 2 babies at once. The next morning brought decisions. Gabriel extended an invitation. "Come to the settlement at Batoche," he urged. "We have founded a place where Métis, Indians, anyone who wants freedom can live. We govern ourselves, make our own laws." Your skills would be welcome. Standing Bear's leadership, Eleanor's healing knowledge, Winona's craft work. It was tempting. A real settlement, safety in numbers, a place to raise children. But Joseph hesitated. We need to counsel with our people, he said. Decide together. That evening, the small band gathered. The debate was thoughtful, each person speaking their mind. Some feared losing their Lakota ways in a mixed settlement. Others pointed out they were already changing, already adapting. Finally, old Benjamin Talltree, who had joined them during the winter flight, spoke. The buffalo are going. The old ways are ending whether we hide in these hills or not. But in this Batoche, we could keep our language, our stories, our ceremonies. Our children could learn to walk in both worlds without shame. Young Singing Dove, heavy with her own first child, added. Eleanor shows us it can be done. She kept herself but became us too. Maybe that is the path. The vote was close, but in the end, hope won over fear. They would go to Batoche, join the Métis settlement, try to build something new while preserving what they could of the old. As they prepared for the journey, Eleanor stood once more at the valley's edge, saying goodbye to this place that had sheltered them. Joseph found her there. Regrets? He asked. Eleanor considered. A year ago, she had been dying slowly in Bitter Creek, a damaged woman with no future. Now she carried new life, stood beside a man who saw her strength instead of her scars, and had found a people who judged her by her actions rather than her blood. No regrets, she said firmly. Only gratitude. Even for the hard parts, the fear, the flight, the uncertainty. Eleanor turned to face him fully. Especially for those. They taught me who I really am. Not the broken woman Thomas tried to make me. Not the damaged goods Bitter Creek saw, but... She searched for words in Lakota. Wastewind good woman. Whole, despite the scars. Strong, because of them. Joseph kissed her forehead, his hand resting protectively over where their children grew. Wastewind, he agreed. My good woman. As the camp packed for the journey to Batoche, Eleanor helped where she could, her movements sure despite her limitations. She saw young Daniel Spotted Tail helping his mother, remembered the frightened boy in the tree who had started her transformation. She saw Sarah Crowfeather teaching her daughter to bead, passing on traditions. She saw Winona organizing supplies with the efficiency that had saved them more than once during the winter flight. These people had taken in a broken white woman and helped forge her into something new, something strong. Now, carrying the future in her womb and the past in her heart, Eleanor would help them forge themselves into something that could survive the changing world. Ready? Winona asked, leading the packed horses over. Eleanor took a last look at the valley, then mounted her horse, the same steady mare that had carried her away from Bitter Creek. So much had changed, but the journey continued. Ready, she said, as they rode out, following Gabriel Dumont toward a new life in Batoche. Eleanor felt the babies move again. Tomorrow was uncertain. It always was. The army might still search for her. The world might still try to cage them. But she had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the greatest strength came not from fighting the current, but from learning to navigate it. The Lakota warrior had walked past every bride in line and reached for the one no one wanted. In choosing her, he had set in motion a transformation neither could have imagined. The damaged goods of Bitter Creek had become a bridge between worlds, and in her womb grew the future children who would never know the cages their parents had escaped, who would walk freely in multiple worlds, who would prove that strength came in many forms. As the sun climbed higher, painting the grasslands gold, the small band rode toward their new destiny. Behind them lay trauma and flight. Ahead lay challenge and hope. And Eleanor Grace Standing Bear, the woman no one wanted who had become the woman everyone needed, rode between past and future with her head high and her spirit free, carrying tomorrow beneath her heart. The settlement of Batoche sprawled along the South Saskatchewan River like a promise kept. Wooden buildings mixed with traditional lodges. Church bells rang alongside drum songs. And in the streets, French, Cree, Lakota, and English mingled like streams flowing into one river. It was a place between worlds, and Eleanor felt immediately at home. Their arrival caused a stir. The story had preceded them. The white woman who fought like a warrior. The Lakota band that had fled rather than surrender. But here, such stories were common. Everyone in Batoche was running from or towards something. Gabriel Dumont had secured them land near the river. Good bottomland for growing and close enough to town for trading. As their small band set up camp, people came to greet them. Eleanor was surprised to find several white women among them, all married into native families, all walking that same line between worlds. "You'll find no judgment here," said Catherine Baptiste, a former schoolteacher from Ontario who now ran a trading post with her Cree husband. "We're all mixed up together, making something new." The twins announced themselves dramatically one hot July night. Eleanor's labor was long and difficult, her damaged body struggling with the task. But Winona was there, along with Marianne Lagimodiere, the settlement's most experienced midwife. "First one comes," Marianne announced, a son with his father's dark hair and his mother's gray eyes. Joseph held him with hands that shook, this warrior who had faced death without flinching, undone by the miracle of new life. "One more," Winona said. "Sister follows brother." The daughter came easier, as if the boy had cleared the path. She was smaller but fierce, gripping Eleanor's finger with surprising strength. "Names?" Marianne asked. Eleanor and Joseph had discussed this. The children would need names for both worlds they would walk in. "James, Fighting Bear," Eleanor said, touching her son's cheek. "James for my father, who died before he could see me sold. Fighting Bear for the strength he'll need. And this one is Anna Morning Star," Joseph added softly. "Anna for Eleanor's mother. Morning Star for—" His voice caught. "For the one who walked before, making room for new love." Eleanor reached for his hand, understanding. The past honored, the future embraced. The twins thrived in Batoche. They grew surrounded by languages, by stories, by a community that saw them not as half-breeds to be ashamed of, but as bridges to be celebrated. James showed his father's steady nature, while Anna had her mother's fierce determination, compensating for her smaller size with sheer will. The years that followed were not easy, but they were good. Eleanor established herself as a healer. Her knowledge from Mary Longknife combined with what she learned from the other women, creating something unique. People came from far away seeking her help, not caring about her scarred arm or mixed family. Joseph found his place too, serving on the council that governed Batoche. His experience in both worlds valuable for negotiations with traders and government officials. He and Gabriel Dumont became close friends, planning hunts and defending the settlement's interests. Winona married a Métis trader named Pierre Lafleur, their wedding a joyous blend of traditions that seemed to embody everything Batoche represented. When she bore her first child, Eleanor served as midwife, the circle complete. But shadows gathered on the horizon. The Canadian government, like the American, grew nervous about these independent settlements. They wanted control, wanted to impose their laws, their ways. Surveyors appeared, marking lands that had been freely used for generations. Talk of rebellion stirred. One autumn evening when the twins were 4, a familiar figure appeared at their door. Mary Longknife, thinner and worn by years on the reservation, but still proud. "Daughter," she said simply, and Eleanor fell into her arms, tears streaming. Mary had walked away from the reservation, seeking the families that had fled north. "Nothing left there but slow death," she said. "Came to see if the seeds we scattered grew strong." She stayed with them, teaching the twins the old songs, the herb lore, the stories. Through her, Eleanor learned what had become of those left behind. Many had died, some had adapted, all had suffered. "But you," Mary said one evening, watching the twins play with other children, all shades and mixtures. "You found the way, not Lakota way, not white way, new way. The rebellion, when it came, was brief but devastating. Louis Riel's provisional government, Dumont's military leadership, they fought for their right to exist as they were. Free people governing themselves, Eleanor served as a nurse, her medical skills desperately needed. Joseph fought alongside Dumont, while Winona organized supplies. But modern weapons and greater numbers told the rebellion failed. Riel was captured, later hanged. Dumont fled to the United States. Batoche fell. As Canadian troops occupied the settlement, Eleanor faced a terrible decision. She was still, technically, a wanted woman in the United States. If her identity was discovered, she could be sent back, separated from her children, from Joseph. "We run again," Joseph said, "further north or west to the mountains." But Eleanor was tired of running. The twins deserved better than a life of flight. "No," she said firmly. "We stand. We've done nothing wrong by Canadian law. I am your wife. These are your children. We are citizens of this place." It was Catherine Baptiste who helped, using her connections to Eastern Canada. Papers were drawn up, identities confirmed. Eleanor Grace Standing Bear, legal wife of Joseph Standing Bear, mother of James and Anna, citizen of the Northwest Territories. The woman who had been property was now, finally, legally free. The years that followed were ones of rebuilding. Batoche changed, became more regulated, less free. But the spirit survived in the people who stayed. Eleanor's children grew strong and smart, educated in both traditional ways and European letters. James showed aptitude for law, understanding early that the future battles would be fought with words and papers. Anna became a teacher, determined that children like her would know their whole heritage. Joseph adapted as he always had, finding ways to preserve what mattered while navigating the new reality. He and Eleanor grew closer with each passing year, their love deepened by shared struggles and triumphs. On their 20th anniversary, marked not from the bride auction, but from the day they truly became husband and wife, they sat by the Saskatchewan River. The twins, now young adults, were in Winnipeg for school. Winona's children played nearby with other youngsters, the sound of their laughter mixing languages and futures. "Do you remember?" Joseph asked. "That day in Bitter Creek? The platform? The rain?" Eleanor's hand went unconsciously to her scarred arm, then dropped. The scars remained but had lost their power to define her. "I remember thinking my life was over," she said. "I never imagined this." "The Lakota warrior walked past every bride in line," Joseph quoted softly, "then reached for the one no one wanted, and found the one he needed." Eleanor finished, as she found what she needed in him. Mary Longknife, ancient now but still sharp, joined them. She moved slowly, but with dignity intact. "Look," she said, pointing to where the children played. "Do you see?" Eleanor looked. The children were of every shade, every mixture. Some had her gray eyes in Lakota faces. Others had Joseph's sharp cheekbones with lighter skin. All played together, argued together, learned together. "This is victory," Mary said. "Not the war Dumont fought, not the papers government signs. This." She gestured at the children. "They will walk in all worlds, speak all languages, carry all stories. They are what we saved." As the sun set over the Saskatchewan, painting the sky in shades of fire and promise, Eleanor knew Mary was right. The journey from Bitter Creek's auction platform to this moment had been longer than miles could measure. She had been transformed from damaged goods to bridge between worlds, from property to free woman, from broken to whole. But more than her own transformation, she had been part of something larger, in fleeing cages, in choosing love over fear, in standing firm when standing was hard. She and Joseph and all the others had created something new, not perfect, not without pain, but real and vital and lasting. The woman no one wanted had become the woman who helped build tomorrow, and in the laughter of children who would never know the cages their parents had escaped, she heard the true sound of freedom. "Mita kuye oyasin," she whispered in Lakota. "We are all related." Joseph took her weathered hand in his equally scarred one. Together, they watched the river flow toward tomorrow, carrying their stories, their struggles, their triumphs toward a future that would remember and honor, and understand that sometimes the greatest love stories were not about perfection, but about two broken people choosing to become whole together. The eagle with the broken wing had learned to walk with wolves, and in walking, had found she could still soar. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Eleanor and Joseph's story. If you're listening to this tale around your own campfire, on a long drive, or perhaps during a quiet evening at home, I'd love to know where in the world their story has reached you. Please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories that bring the untamed frontier to life, and share your thoughts in the comments below. These tales of courage, transformation, and love from America's wild past belong to all of us, and I'd be honored to hear what this story meant to you.